Oh,
The
no,
garbage out there
I
today.
threw him over the fence to the German Shepherd, and that quieted him down.
All right, it looks like we're live on YouTube. Guys, we're here with another Coaches Conversation Cafe. We're actually having a surprise visit. It's actually Wednesday instead of our normal Tuesday, 1 p.m. And for all of us, we thought, man, we want to jump on live and really have this conversation. And so you're getting another one this week. We want to welcome in Ryan Toss. I'll let Tom go ahead and take over and be able to just lead us today.
Yeah, we're excited to have Ryan Toss, who is the Central Section CIF Commissioner. Just got that. What a way to come into a commissioner job during the pandemic. His first year, he's had to deal with a lot. But we're excited to have you today, Ryan. And of course, we're going to ask you some questions about, because everybody's still in limbo about what's going on with sports and are we going to get to play. And I was reading an article today, I guess some kids did a rally at Tulare Western and hashtag something to play or something, want to play or something like that. But anyway, Ryan, before we get started, give us your background or your journey to get to this position. I know, I got to know you as an athletic director at CVC as well as Lemoore. But talk to us even before that. Where did your career start and how'd you get there?
I guess my path probably started like, most high school coaches, started by being a high school athlete, and being influenced by, the coaches that I had then and realizing at some point in time that maybe that's something I'd like to do myself. And so I went to Emmanuel High School in Reedley. John Thiessen was my basketball coach and just a great mentor of mine to this day. And so I would say any path that I have in my life probably started in a lot of ways with him. And so after that, I went to Fresno Pacific. I thought I was good enough to play ball, and I was not. And I also realized that I didn't want to put in the amount of hours that it requires at the collegiate level. And so I ended up, we had a club men's volleyball team my freshman year there. So I played that. So that's the closest I ever got to college athletics. And then my sophomore year in college, Coach Thiessen called and got me started coaching back at Emmanuel again. So I think I was 19 or 20 years old as a JV assistant. And then the following year took over the freshman team. And looking back now, I'm like, why in the world would they ever hire a 19 or 20-year-old to do much of anything? Tom's, been in that athletic director chair. And when the 19 or 20-year-old walks in and says, I want to coach for you, you're like, I don't think so. And so that's a hard sell. And so I'm really grateful that they gave me the opportunity to do that and took a chance on me to do that while I went to school. And I went to Fresno Pacific, like I said, and got my English degree, went through teacher ed. My first teaching job, I think I was a long-term sub at Hanford High. Then my first full-time job was at Dinuba High School. And I was there for a couple of years. Ran into another mentor. Paul Springer was the longtime athletic director there, who was a little bit different type of mentor, but somebody that I just really love and respect just as much as anybody. And so after 2 years there, I hadn't coached basketball for 2 years. I'd kind of pushed that away, helped with the golf team at Dinuba. And Central Valley Christian reached out and they were looking for a boys basketball coach. And again, what they were doing, thinking about hiring me to teach English and coach basketball, when my extent of my experience was coaching freshman basketball, I still don't quite understand. And so whatever, things lined up the right way. And I went to CVC, coached basketball there for 4 years, I believe. My claim to fame there is I coached some really, really good athletes that happened to also play basketball. Stephen Vogt and Ryan Colburn, probably the two that jump out the most. And
yeah,
my basketball teams, we were okay, but those guys were great kids, but basketball was not the first love, I'll put it that way. And so my fourth year in, Mark Gambini was our athletic director. And at that point in time, our football team was just rolling. We were in the middle of about, I think, a 28-game winning streak or something like that. And we had a new administrator who wanted the athletic director to not coach a sport full-time or to be the head coach of a quote unquote major program. And obviously football would qualify as major. That same fourth year, my first child was born. And I said, you know what, it's a good time for me to try something different. And so I slid over to the athletic director role. and did that, I think, for 9 years at CVC. Somewhere during those 9 years, I started coaching tennis. We started that program and wondered why it took me so long to coach that sport where, when the parent calls and asks, hey, how come my kid didn't play? You just reply, well, they can't beat the kid in front of them. And so it took away all the subjectivity that we all saw in baseball and basketball and other sports. After some time at CVC, I got a little bit involved with the central section, just in various ways. I took a job at Lemoore High School as the athletic director there. My 2 years at Lemoore, I was the president-elect for the central section, serving on the executive committee. And then pretty much on a lark, I applied for a job in the Sac Joaquin section as their assistant commissioner, thinking that there would be no way in the world that they would hire somebody from outside the section. And that if nothing else, though, it would be good experience for me to go through the process and maybe get an interview or two. And again, somebody's plans were far greater than mine, and ended up taking the job. Their office is in Lodi, so family, we moved. And that's
Wow.
been about 5.5 years ago. We moved up here, did that job for 5 years, I guess. And then again, when Jim Critchlow announced his retirement, spent a lot of time thinking and praying about, what I wanted to do next, if I wanted to pursue that, and decided, what's the harm in checking to see if the doors keep opening. And so it's kind of a winding path, but for whatever reason, doors keep opening for me. And now I'm in this job that I never really imagined I'd be in. As a high school athlete, I had no clue what CIF really did except stamp their names on the plaques at the end of the year, and that was about it. And
Yeah.
so it's a very humbling position to be in, to get to work with so many great coaches, great athletic directors, and try to serve our student athletes. But as Tom mentioned, taking this job July 1st in the middle of the pandemic was not ideal timing. But again, somebody's plan is greater than mine, and there's a reason
Yeah.
for it all. So
That's right. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so we're at that point with this pandemic, obviously has given you a lot of challenges with the athletics, and gosh, the kids are just going nuts. They're not being able to play. So I know yesterday you guys had a meeting, and can you go ahead and give us the update on what's the latest as far as being able to play?
yeah, I guess I'll preface it by this. Very early on with the pandemic, CIF as a whole group has made it clear that we're going to follow the Department of Public Health guidelines. We operate it's an odd system. We operate under the auspices of the California Department of Education. And so we're kind of blessed by the legislature and everything else to run high school sports. And so in many ways, we kind of have to abide by what our state is telling us to do, since
Right.
we're loosely connected to them. And so the most recent guidelines that came out about youth sports came out in December, and a couple of the big issues that came out in that guidance that have negatively affected high school sports are, one thing is that there's currently travel guidelines, so you can only compete inside your county or with a bordering county if you're in the appropriate colored tier. And they've assigned all the different sports to different tiers. At the start of this whole conversation, the CIF perspective was we wanted, and we still do want every sport to be in the red or the purple tier. CDPH started off with every sport in the orange or the yellow tier. And so you've seen a bit of a melding of that, where some of our sports are in the purple tier, golf, tennis, swim, cross country, track and field. And once we get off the regional stay-at-home order, those sports will all be ready to go, and they'll be able to have competition. Bluntly speaking, it won't look like our normal competition because large invitationals might not happen, things like that. But it would just be so encouraging just to see some kind of competition and athletic events taking place. And we think that'll build some positive momentum.
Right.
But back to yesterday's announcement, mostly because of those travel guidelines, we were forced to cancel our championships for football, girls volleyball, water polo, and cross country. Just because if we can't travel more than one county away, it's pretty much impossible to have a section-wide event at this point in time.
Right.
The positive side of that for our schools is it does extend the end date for those sports. And so a sport like football now has until April 17 to try to get some games in. We all hope and pray that our kids are able to do something soon. This is not what any of us signed up for, and not what our kids want or need and what our coaches want and need. And so we're still advocating as CIF, especially our state office representatives, working with the CDPH, still trying to get some of the guidance changed, maybe a little bit loosened, for lack of a better term, whether it be the travel guidance, whether it be we'd love to see a sport like, basketball or wrestling, move from the yellow to the orange, or, football move from the orange to the red. That's still something we're pushing for. But at the same point in time, we also understand the current situation our state's in. High school sports is not going to be the number one priority for our public health department right now. They've got a few other more important things to do, distribute a vaccine and everything else. So it's been a hard week, because even though we've known for a while that we're kind of barreling towards the possibility of, having to cancel championship events, when you finally get to it and, you have to write up the memo and say the words out loud, it's rather difficult.
Yeah, that'd be tough. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that you put out on your website, you've updated, and I see like the sports that are able to play in the purple tier, which we're in right now, that the first date that they can play is February 15th. But because we're on an in-home shutdown, does that mean that's tentative? Is that right?
Very tentative. The CDPH has put out that their first allowable date to play is January 25. So
Right.
In theory, if we were to come off the regional stay-at-home order between now and January 25, on the 25th, we could have cross-country competition in the central section. There will be cross-country competition in Northern California and the greater Sacramento area, because they're no longer under the regional stay-at-home order.
Now, what about golf and tennis? They wouldn't be able to play right away. They have to wait till February 15th.
Yeah, and that's a great question, Tom. We actually, before yesterday, that start date was March 15 for those sports. And so we actually moved that sooner, with the hopes of, once we get off the regional stay-at-home order, that they'll be able to start almost immediately, with a couple weeks of practice, and then maybe get after it. And so we tried to, and we did the same thing with swimming, moved that date up quite a bit, just to, if people want to start their seasons early and are able to do so, go right ahead. So.
And how does it affect practices? Like, say some of these spring sports or the red ones, if they want to practice, I don't see practice dates on there. So what do they do?
Yeah, we've taken off all of our practice start dates for this year, and just going with the statement of, once the California Department of Public Health, your the county Department of Public Health, and your school or district allow you to practice, go ahead. So,
okay, so it's pretty much up to the district then.
It is, well, and it's up to as long as you're within that guidance from the health department,
right.
The school can absolutely start. I actually just got that email before we got on, somebody asking, can we start baseball practice tomorrow? I said, as long as it's allowed by, everything, all the guidance, absolutely. And even baseball practice can happen right now. Baseball, I got some baseball guys here on the call. Baseball, softball, our practices are allowed right now, as long as social distancing is in place. And
so even though it says they can't do anything till the red?
Yeah. So all of our sports right now, that was one of anytime we get this guidance, of course, it's a mixed bag. There's some good and there's some bad. The good part of the guidance that came out in December was they took away any limits on the size of cohorts or teams. And so now you could have a whole football team practicing together, a whole baseball team practicing together, with the caveat of maintaining 6 feet of social distance. So a sport like basketball, we're not, you can't have scrimmages, but a sport like baseball, you could do most everything out on the baseball field and maintain that 6 feet. Right. And so I do think that because of the nature of that sport, baseball, softball, and because it's a red tier sport, I am pretty optimistic about those this spring. Obviously we have some numbers have to get better, but even if it's just practice at this point in time, I think that one thing we're all probably on the same page with is the connections that our kids get, whether it be in practice, competition, or whatever, that's just really important, and so it's funny how in a normal year, we hear over and over again how important playoffs are and how important championships are. And now I'm getting calls and emails from people saying, we don't care about playoffs. We don't care about championships.
Just let them play, huh?
We just want to be able to be with our kids and our student athletes
Yeah.
and play games. And, I'm sure if we looked at it long enough and thought about it long enough, this whole pandemic will produce some positives. And maybe that's one positive that it will, make us, at least for, I'm hoping for a honeymoon period of, 3-4 weeks, where people are yelling at officials, people aren't complaining about playing time and all that kind of stuff. But I hope that we do remember just how great it's going to be just to be able to have games.
Oh, man, no kidding. One last question before I let these guys chime in. So if a kid is playing, let's say, because I read on your other statement that they can only be in one cohort at a time. So that's say that football can't play games, but they can practice. And then there's another sport gonna play. Can a kid, he can only do one of those still?
Yeah, what I mentioned, that mixed bag, this is one of the negatives in the guidance that, bluntly speaking, I don't really understand. We have schools that are in session that, the students are in 3 or 4 different cohorts during the school day. And
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I don't quite understand why once we get after 3 o'clock, they can't be in 2 different cohorts. But right now that language is you're limited to one cohort / team at a time.
So a
And
kid would have to make a decision on that.
It would have to make a decision. I do think that we might have some schools look at even going with just a league only schedule to try to accommodate that for some kids,
Right.
saying we're doing 6 weeks of this sport and then we're going 6 weeks of this sport. And in a normal year, we'd all freak out about that. But this year we're like, I get 6 weeks. I think our students
Yeah.
would be pretty good with that. So yeah,
So is that a CIF decision or is that a district decision?
that's a Department of Public Health guidance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as if they decided we're going to go 6 weeks,
Yeah, no, that would be a league decision, pretty
a
much.
league decision. Okay.
Yeah. And the hard part here, and I know it's going to be really hard for people who ask the question to me, when is CIF canceling sports? Well, one, we don't control the regular season events. And so we cancel championships, which was horrible. We have our start date and our end date. If schools play between then, the start and the end, that's great. But I do think some of our districts are going to have to make some tough decisions soon and say, you know what, we don't have time to play this sport anymore. The football is the one that we talk about the most, and it's maybe the best example of this is the cost of reconditioning the football equipment worth it for 3 weeks of football? Is it 4 weeks of football? Is it 5 weeks of football? And as CIF, we can't tell a school how to spend their money. And so that comes back to a district decision on how they're going to handle that. And so we've sent out some recommended dates that, if you want to have 4 weeks of competition, you need to start by this date. But some districts I know are considering having earlier dates, or even saying without updated guidance, we might be done for a couple sports soon. And that's just.
So that'll be the district to decide that.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. It won't be CIF.
No.
Yeah.
And I guess, and I just want to make real clear too, I don't know if I was or not at the beginning, that CIF's we want to follow the guidance. We're going to follow the guidance, but we badly want to play. I mean,
Right.
it's killing us as individuals. Most of the guys and gals that I work with in CIF circles, we all have high school age kids ourselves,
Yeah.
so it's not like it doesn't affect us personally. And we just want students to be able to play. We've kind of, you mentioned the rallies for the Let Them Play, movement, which is great. I think that, anytime our students and our parents, want to make their voices heard in a peaceful, positive way, I thought that was great. It brought a lot of attention to this.
Mhm.
Our kind of mantra has been, let us try, because
Really?
this high school athletics programs over the last 9 months that will follow the guidance. If you look around, it doesn't take too much to find people playing sports in California, and
Right.
high schools have really done a great job of following the guidance. And we've even made the statement of, let us try. If it doesn't work, this is to the CDPH, within an hour of sending an email to our executive director, all of our schools are going to get the message, shut it down.
Yeah.
And they're going to shut it down. At least they've proven so far that they would. And so that's a big frustration for us is we want to try. We see other states having the opportunity to try and be, for the most part, pretty successful. We understand that California's overall metrics for the pandemic are just different than other states. I think somebody tried to explain it to me as simply as our yellow tier or our red tier is everybody else's yellow tier, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so when we're looking at, whatever those metrics are, we're just much stricter as a state, I suppose. And
Yeah.
so the frustrations we get when we hear from parents and students and coaches, we do a lot of nodding because
Yeah.
we're right there at the same frustrations. And it's a little bit worse sometimes because people have the expectation that we have the ability to make those changes and to change those policies. And while we advocate and while we have people that are pushing in that direction, at the end of the day, it's not our call to make. So
I like that, let us try, because to me, I feel like that's what the elementary schools have been pushing for, and they're getting to do that. I have 3 daughters that are teachers, and they're getting finally their students back, and it's like, hey, let us try. We want to do this. If something happens, we'll shut it down. So
and I think
hey guys,
sorry, Tom, I just want to say, I think our coaches have just proven to be so resourceful and bluntly creative.
right.
I think they'll find a way to get it done. And so I hope we have that opportunity. So
Great.
Ryan, I have a question for you. This is Isaac. So one is I'm listening to you and I'm loving your outlook and your approach to the scenario. It seems really balanced. You mentioned a couple of different scenarios in your upbringing as far as, high school and people leading you, but what is, and this is kind of like directed to our coaches and so that they can have this, and it probably changes the tone of like, what's going on to how to handle what's going on. And so what are you doing that's keeping you in this place where you're able to like have these conversations and have the energy and still kind of bring it on a level that says, yeah, I love that move forward attitude. So what are you doing to do that? What's good for you that we can take?
what's good for me? I will, to be completely honest, July was hard. I was in not a very good place personally. I was not in a very good headspace. I was bringing in a lot of negativity, and that was just kind of festering. And so I've had to try to make a concerted effort to bring in, whether it be social media posts, whether it be books, whether it even be, TV shows, movies, whatever, that are kind of helping me be a little bit more balanced and try to remember that, people call and, it's the standard thing. People call and ask, hey, how you doing? And I don't know how often we really care how we're doing, but I try to respond with, hey, this is not a perfect time, but I have my health, my family has their health, I have a job. I mean, in the whole realm of life, I get the frustrations, but I have so much to be grateful for that I really shouldn't spend a whole lot of time complaining. Now, easier said than done. That's for
Yeah.
sure. But individuals that I've really, podcasts. John Gordon has been great for me. I kind of stumbled upon him, throughout this time, and there's just been different times that I've clicked on a link or seen a story, and it has just really fed my heart, for lack of a better way of saying it. And without that, I think that it's really easy. And I'm not on social media near as much as I used to be, just because there's just not a lot of positivity on there right now.
No.
And I think it's so easy for us to get together with people that share our same beliefs. And sometimes if things are not going well for all of us, then we all just kind of wallow together. But if we can find people who will lift us up a little bit, and for me, other section commissioners, other athletic directors in the section, principals in the section, people that I've known for a long time, have really been great as far as trying to encourage. And so I hope that I'm able to share that with other people as well, just because I know my day can be made with a simple text or an email. It really can. It can yesterday was a difficult day, and making that announcement and going through several different meetings and different doing media and things like that. I got an email last night from somebody I've known for 20 years saying, "Hey, we know this sucks, but we appreciate what you're trying to do." And that makes my day. And I hope that our coaches realize that their student athletes are in that same exact boat. Just one piece of personal interaction can impact a kid far more than we think. And so I don't know. I guess, Isaac, I'm lucky to have some people encouraging me. I'm trying to be very deliberate about what I'm putting into my head and trying to realize that the there's being positive isn't being blind, and so I think that's kind of where I was, if before all this started. It's like, oh, a positive mindset is just thinking that everything's always going to be happy and rosy, and that's not it. Having a positive mindset is just realizing where you're at and that there is a path forward. I said on a memo to our schools last month, I said, are we in the middle of a detour or of a dead end? And I think for pretty much all of us, we don't like detours, but they slow us down, they take us where we don't want to go, but we eventually get to our destination. And very few times in our life are we truly at a dead end. We have the ability to turn around, backtrack, and find our way out. And so I think that we're on a long detour and it sucks and it's difficult. But I think if we realize that at the end of this, whether it be, even if some of our student athletes this year don't get to play, which is just the worst case scenario, I think that we have to realize that our destination is somewhere past playing high school sports. I think that our coaches, especially our great coaches, they realize that they're not coaching for a championship in the spring of 21. They're coaching these kids for life.
Life. Yeah.
And that's, sorry, I went off on a tangent there, Isaac.
No,
but
but
Well said. Well
it all
said.
matters. So like even your journey to get to this place matches that, because I think it shows everybody that, yeah, you start off maybe playing and thinking you want to do basketball, and who knows where you're going to end up. And in this scenario, yeah, you started off wanting to have a certain kind of sport, and detour is the situation, right? And so we know detours as people, and so it totally matters. But I think that that's also a huge piece for our coaches to be able to hear, is that if we're more conscious about what we're doing, because in July, you were saying it was different, you became more conscious about what you were doing, and you fed your mind the right things to get to a different place, and it's really showing up today. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Ryan, Adam Valencia here. Hey, I want to congratulate you on the work that you're doing. And again, we're so excited to have you. I just want to congratulate you on your website. I've spent some time on that. In fact, I went on and the NFHS, which is one of our partners as well. And I think that, being able to have programs and opportunities for coaches in terms of resources, providing support when it comes to students that are dealing with social and emotional learning, dealing with suicide prevention. And I wanted to congratulate you on that, because I actually went through and completed that course, that free course that you have on there. And so very, very good course. And I'm going to encourage everybody who's listening today to make sure they go on your site and find that. But my question to you is really, what are we providing for coaches? What are the expectations? One of the biggest things why we all came together was really to look at the standards of coaching. What are we providing? I guess just in general, what's provided for coaches in terms of resources, but what are the expectations on your end for new coaches that are coming in?
great question. And I wish I had an easy answer, because, just kind of a side note, we'll get the call every once in a while. Hey, this coach we have is no good. Can you get rid of him? Calling our office. And we have to remind them that we have no purview over who a district or a school hires a coach. What we can do is try to provide resources.
Yep.
And while we may not have a set standards that we, say all of our coaches need to do this, this, and this, bluntly speaking, our coaches have to do so much more now,
Right.
just even step on the high school campus than they used to. When I started some years ago, all those different courses they have to take and things like that. There's a lot of hoops to jump through to get to coach now. I would say one of the better programs that CIF has partnered with in the last few years is the Inside Out initiative,
Inside out.
Yeah.
which is just a great program. The whole goal is trying to create transformational coaches instead of transactional coaches.
Mm,
And if you look back on who you played for or who I played for,
right.
pretty easy to come up with the transactional ones, the ones who were more concerned with what was our record at the end of the year versus the transformational ones, which
Right.
how do they impact their kids, their students, their athletes' lives.
Mhm.
And so that's been a really good program. The NFL is a major partner with that.
Great.
So that's been really good, and it's been available to all of our coaches. I can't tell you how many of them have taken advantage of it.
Right.
You mentioned the NFHS program. NFHS Learn has really, over the last few years, been outstanding as far as adding so many free courses.
Right.
Right.
That's not just for coaches. There's coaches for parents, or courses for
Courses for
parents,
parents. Yeah.
coaches, students, and it's just free information.
Yep.
And I'm thrilled to hear that you took the course.
Oh yeah, it was great. Really great. It was a great course, and that's why I said I just wanted to thank you for having that available, because that's the first thing I look for. Anytime I go onto a website, especially with the work that we're doing around supporting students and families, and we're looking at social emotional learning, I always look for those kind of things. And so again, that's why I said I appreciate you having that. It was great.
Well, thanks. And I can't take all the credit for that at all.
Sure.
Kelly Jones in our office, she handles our social media and, does a lot of pretty much everything else right now that I don't do.
Right.
And she is always asking, can I tweet this? Can I post this? And I think she has a real servant's heart, and especially when it comes to students in need.
Yep.
And so I think that's something that she's just exceptional with.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
That's
Thanks
awesome.
for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback on what you said too about coaches, Ryan. I think at this time, especially these kids, I've had kids approach me, I'm still coaching a little bit. So I've had parents approach me and just say, gosh, my kid just needs some contact. And just being able, I think, to have that even practice where they can connect with their coach. Coaches need to understand so much. These kids just need us to, like you said, we're coaching life.
Yeah.
We might not get to play, but man, the things that you're teaching them are so important, and it just helps these kids stay connected well.
Yeah, Tom, I'm going to tell you, as a dad, my son turned 17 today. I worry that he doesn't have that coach or that teacher that is connecting with him, and because I know this is a coach's conversation, but I think we're kind of shortchanging if we just narrow it down to coaches. It's the choir
Right.
director, it's the band director, it's
Right.
all those different people that, breathe into our kids. And so I worry all the time about my kids. Do they have that person besides me that's going to help them? Because let's be honest, after about age 14, as parents, we're not always
They're
the
not
best
listening to us.
Yeah. We may think they are.
Yeah.
think they're following every step we take, but
Yep.
they're looking for somebody else,
That's right.
to provide some leadership and to provide direction in their life. And that is just for my wife and I, that's, maybe the greatest prayer we have is that there will be somebody in my kids' lives that helps them through this process.
Mhm.
Right.
I think that whether we're in the middle of a pandemic or if we were in the middle of a normal season and wrapping up, in the middle of league basketball, soccer, and wrestling right now, I don't think that's changed.
Right.
I hope that our coaches and teachers are still trying to provide that leadership, and I know that a lot of them are.
Yeah. The good ones are the
Yeah.
ones that they got into that profession for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Those are the ones you're always looking for.
Yep.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So you guys, I think that we don't want to keep you for too long, Ryan, but if there's any questions for us, panel wise, or any other shares that you think might hit our coaches and help them, we're more than willing to take that.
I don't know if I have anything that's really all that groundbreaking, but I do think that as this goes on, I think that our coaches might have to pivot a little bit, and maybe we're teaching more life skills and coping skills and things like that instead of worrying about the kid's jump shot.
Yeah. No,
And
you're right.
I
You're
think
right.
and maybe that carries over into future years too.
Mhm.
You know, it's really easy. It sounds bad to say this. Our coaches are really good at teaching skills. You know, I think sometimes the how to live life and how to deal with the disappointments is the much harder thing to learn and teach. And I think we've all had the conversation with our teams, you know, this is why you play high school sports. You learn how to get back up. You learn how to deal with disappointment.
Right.
We just never expected the disappointment to be this massive.
Right.
You know, just to be blunt, we never expected it to be this bad. But if our student athletes can make it through this, imagine how resilient they're going to be moving into
Right.
life.
That's
Yeah.
right.
It's a great point.
So I hope that, and I know our great coaches are doing this. I just hope that all of our student athletes have the opportunity to have one of those coaches or teachers or
Mhm.
youth group leaders or whatever in their life to try to help lead them along this path. Because this is a rocky path right now. I don't want to be all Pollyannish and saying, oh, we're all going to be okay. No, there's going to be casualties. There are going to be, you know, a lot of unfortunate things that happen.
Right.
But I do think that with the right guidance and the right support, I think our kids can make it through this. So.
Well, you know, we're here for you again. You know, part of our team, the work that we do, and you know, I have two programs that we are serving around the nation and Canada, and they're specific to support students academically, socially, and emotionally. And you know, we're currently working with the pilot project over at Mount Whitney High School in Visalia, and it's just going very well. And just want you to know that we're here for you. You know, any way that we can support your efforts. You know, because I know it's a very difficult time, and I know we start talking about the needs of students and families when during these particular times. That, you know, we're on the ground. Our boots are on the ground every day, trying to figure out the best way to support our coaches and also our teachers, and really our families. I mean, again, we're so grateful to have someone like Tom Buckley. I say this all the time, and I got to brag about him. That, you know, we were fortunate. Both Keith and I were fortunate to have a coach like him. And gosh, that's why we're still doing this today. And that's why we got into coaching. And, you know, to have you on board with us and just to, you know, just again, your information was very helpful. And we're hoping that, again, we can get through all this together. But, you know, you're not in this alone. You gotta know that all of us here that are here today are here to support you any way that we can.
I appreciate that. I just thank you guys for all you're doing. I mean, you said it, you're the boots on the ground. Unfortunately, I don't get to see students too often these days.
Yep.
You know, it took a while to adjust to how detached you become when you're not on a school campus.
Right.
Right.
So I really appreciate what you guys are working on and doing. And once we get through this, let me know, and
Sure.
I'll try to come out and be right there with you guys. So
Definitely.
anything I can do on my end, just let me know, and we will all keep pulling the same way. And you know, what is it, Minnesota PJ Fleck? You know, we'll keep rowing the boat, and as long as we're rowing the same direction,
Same
you know,
direction. That's right.
we're just more powerful together. So I think that'd be great.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to
You're
have
doing a
you
great
back on.
job.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back on at some point whenever you have some availability. I'm sure, you know, Coach Buckley will be in touch with you, but we'd love to have you back.
Anytime. This is my pleasure. So appreciate
Great seeing you, Ryan. You're doing a great job. Keep it up.
Hey, thank you. Really appreciate that, and appreciate what all you gentlemen are doing. So take
All
care
right.
of yourselves. So,
Take care.
Right. Take care, Ryan.
Thanks for being on Coach's Conversation Cafe today. We will see you back on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Enjoy your week.